So we actually looked it up today. So in Manila, I don't know if you know or if you care, but in Manila itself, there are 1 million people in this one city. Now, in the outskirts of Manila altogether, there's about 15 million people. Most of them are at the mega mall. But there's about 15 million people, like right around Manila. And then in all of the Philippines, I thought this was really interesting, in all of the Philippines, there are 100 million Filipinos. Okay, yes, you can clap for yourselves, good job. There's a lot of you. 100 million in all of the Philippines. But when I heard that number, you know what I thought about? In Revelation chapter 5, in Revelation chapter 5, it says, around the throne of Jesus, it says there are 10,000 times 10,000 angels. Do you know what 10,000 times 10,000 is? It's 100 million. It's 100 million angels. And I thought about that. Okay, picture, I mean, just look in this room. There's like 15, 20,000 people. That's nothing. Imagine the throne, like right now, this isn't make-believe. Right now in heaven, imagine 100 million angels all around the throne of Jesus. All around the throne of Jesus. I mean, can you even try to picture what that would look like? Picture every single person in the Philippines. Every single person in the Philippines. I picture them as Filipino angels, okay? I mean, imagine just the mass. The Bible says that he looked and he says there were 100 million angels worshiping Jesus, and they were all saying the same thing. They were all saying, worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Man, that's such a fascinating sight. This isn't make-believe, like that's going on in heaven right now. 100 million angels all saying, worthy is the Lamb who was slain. You guys, that's why we've gathered here tonight. Is because we're joining that chorus of 100 million angels, and we're all saying, don't look at us, worthy is the Lamb who was slain. I mean, we're just a small, tiny group in this arena, but we're saying to Jesus, we agree, you are the only one who's worthy of honor, respect, glory, forever and ever. In that passage, it talks about how God sits on his throne in Revelation 4, and he says there was lightning and thunder coming from that throne. It talks about these 7 pillars of fire around the throne of God. And then it describes the 100 million angels. Everyone's looking at this one throne. I want you to do something for me right now. Everyone take a deep, deep breath. And now let it out. You were all able to do that because he allowed you to do that right now. You understand that?
Yes.
Isn't that a crazy thought that every breath is a gift from him? Like he didn't promise me one more. He had to give that to me. There's a being in heaven right now surrounded by 100 million angels, and he determines whether or not I live through this message. I mean, he determines whether or not you live through this message and whether you ever walk out of this arena. It's all up to him. That's why these angels are saying we wouldn't even be alive. Even the angels are dependent on him. 1 Timothy says that he alone is immortal. That means all life comes from him. So there's this one being on the throne that's made all of us. And we're breathing right now because he lets us. And all those angels that are worshiping him right now, every breath comes from him, and they're praising him because they recognize we wouldn't even be here without him. And so we're here to worship him. And I promise you, the moment you see him, because we will all see him one day, right?
Yes.
Could you you gotta get your mind around this. We're all gonna see him. I mean, the Bible says that when Moses said to God, Moses asked God in Exodus, he says, can I see your face? He goes, God, just let me see your face. And do you remember what God said to Moses? God says, no man can see my face and live. That's crazy. He tells Moses, I know you want to see me right now as a human being, but do you understand that no human being can actually see my face and live through it?
Yes.
And what does that do to you? I know some of you grew up in church, so you're used to hearing the word God. And you say it over and over and over, and you lose its meaning. When we say that word God, we're talking about a being who right now is so different from us that if he tore the roof off of this Colosseum and he let us look at his face, we would all die immediately. We're talking about a being who's allowing us to live right now and determines whether we make it through this meeting. When we say God, we're talking about a being sitting on his throne in unapproachable light, with lightning and thunder and fire all around his throne, and 100 million angels all saying, worthy, worthy are you to receive glory, honor. But the Bible says, while we cannot see him right now, the Bible says there is going to come a day when every one of us will actually see him. And for some of us in this room, it is going to be the most amazing moment of our lives. Okay?
Yes.
You guys, think about the greatest experience you've ever had on this earth and multiply that by 1,000,000. And that's what it's going to be like for some of us when we see his face. And for some others, it is going to be the most terrifying moment of your existence. For others of you, think of the worst day you ever had on the earth. This is 1,000,000 times worse than your worst nightmare to see God at that moment. For some of you, that moment is going to be more painful, infinitely more painful than your worst day on earth. I mean, no matter how you slice it, that's going to be the most shocking moment of our lives, is when we actually see him. And so, while you are still alive, if there's one thing you have to be sure of, absolutely sure of, you've got to be sure of what it's going to be like, what is going to happen to you when you see God. Is it going to be this amazing moment where you're just going, man, I can't believe it. He said to me, well done. He's accepting me in. He's loving me. This is forever and ever. Is it going to be that? Or will it be, depart from me, I never knew you? That terrifying, awful moment. But here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Whatever you do, don't just take my word for it. Read this book for yourself. Okay, I'm begging you. You have to be sure of this. I don't understand why people are so casual about what they believe. I'm going, do you understand you're going to see him? You better know what you believe. You better be sure of what you believe. I mean, literally, that could be the most devastating, worst moment of your existence, leading you to an absolute horror of pain forever. Or it could be the greatest. So if there's one thing you need to know, one thing you gotta be serious about, you better know where you're going at the end. You better know what it's gonna be like when you see his face. So don't just take my word for it. Study this book. The Bible says, even in the Bible, in Acts 17, it talks about the Bereans, and it says how these Bereans, in verse 11, it says these Jews